بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. We're looking here in the book حلية طالب العلم, the etiquette of the seeker of knowledge by Shaykh Bakr Abu Zaid rahimahullah. On point number 46, where he mentions the glory of the scholars. And he says, being adorned by the glory of the scholars includes preservation of knowledge and exalting it, protecting the honor of its glory and nobility. How much you profit from knowledge and implementing it depends on how much you spend of it in this way. And your loss is dependent upon how much you miss out from this. And there can be no strength or might but by Allah, the Almighty, the All-Wise. Therefore beware of people with high status playing with you for a fool, or playing you for a fool, or being curbed by fools, which will result in you becoming lenient in your fatwa, or in your verdicts, assessment, or speech. Also do not scurry to the materialistic people, or stand at the doorsteps, and do not give knowledge to those not deserving of it, no matter what their status is. Rather show eyesight in your insight by reading the life and biographies of the Imams that have passed away. If you do so, you will see the self-sacrifice for the sake of this protection, especially in the books collected, who collect their examples, such as the book Min Akhlaq al-Ulama, from the etiquettes of the scholars by Muhammad Sulaymaan, Al-Islam Bayn al-Ulama'i wal-Hukam, Islam between the scholars and the rulers by Abdul Aziz al-Badri, and Manahij al-Ulama fi Amr bil-Ma'ruf wa Nahy an-Munkar by Faruq Samura'i. And I hope that you will see that what they mentioned in the book Izzatul Ulama, which is written by the author himself, may Allah make easy its completion and publishing. So here the Shaykh is speaking about the status of the alim, in that the scholar has glory, and the scholar has status that other people don't have. And that means then the scholar is not allowed to belittle himself, and that also comes by belittling the knowledge that they possess, and the way that they relay the knowledge, who they teach, how they carry it. And for those reasons, the ulama, they advise ta'zim al-ilm, to venerate and respect knowledge. For knowledge itself, it is sharaf. And that's why the scholars have the most honor and most status. So it's a reminder for the person Allah has given knowledge, not to make it cheap, in that they don't act upon the knowledge by being persuaded or swayed by people who are less than them. Or teaching those who are less deserving, in that they're not appreciative of the knowledge. And this comes in some of the Salaf, that they would not narrate hadith to certain people because certain people were not qualified to carry the knowledge, and that they would not respect and honor the knowledge. And so one way that they would ensure someone is serious is that when they go through these type of challenges, for example, they require the person to memorize the Quran or to study another subject before they come into their majalis. And these type of tests will show commitment. And so the benefit we take the ulama with their status, when they advise and they adhere to this knowledge, they have the most honor. And when they lose that status for knowledge, then knowledge itself becomes something degraded. And to prove the point, Shaykh brings some abiyat, lines of poetry, written by Al-Jurjani, Ali ibn Abdul Aziz, who died 392 Hijri. And it's found in his biography that he said, "They say there is some discomfort in you, but in fact they saw a man who withdrew from the place of humiliation. I saw that whoever draws nearer to people will become insignificant to them, and whosoever is honored by self-esteem will be honored. And if only the people of knowledge protected it," means knowledge, "then it would in turn have protected them. And if they exalted it in the hearts of people, it would have been exalted as well." And so in these abiyat, the author, Jurjan, he's speaking about the status of knowledge. And the shahid of it is a point where he mentions that if the people of knowledge protected knowledge, then it would turn out protected them. And if they exalted in the hearts of others, then the knowledge would have been exalted. And this poem, it's referred to as وصف العالم الأبي والاعتزاز بعلم السمو الهمة. And this poem itself is something which is very beneficial. Alhamdulillah, we translated it some time ago. So someone who can read the full poem. Along, I believe there's also an explanation by Shaykh Adnan al-Masqari, hafidhahullah. But the benefit of the poem is that it teaches the scholar and the person of knowledge to be careful. That knowledge has status and honor. It shouldn't be something which is degraded. So the honor has to come from the scholar with knowledge, and then people also honor knowledge. But if knowledge has become something like a means, a tool, which anyone can use in order to obtain what they want, then ilm will become loathed in the sight of the people. Just very important advice to ourselves. We make ta'zeem in ilm, respect the knowledge, and part of that has to do with etiquette, the way in which we narrate knowledge, how we do it, when we sit down and study, how we study. And the second point after this is the protection of knowledge. And if you attain status, then remember that the rope that helped you to reach it was seeking knowledge. So by the grace of Allah, and then due to your knowledge, you reach whatever status you have reached in teaching. In this teaching post, or fatwa, or juristry, or position as a judge, or so on. So give knowledge its due respect, and fair share of implementation, and its due status. And this is important. Ilm has to be protected and preserved. And again, there are some people who, because of their carelessness in knowledge, or the fact that they don't preserve it, that knowledge becomes then something which everyone can just claim, and everyone can just say whatever they wish about it. And it's not protected. And so the job of the ulama is to protect ilm from being used by the people who are not knowledgeable, or from being abused by the people who are knowledgeable for other gains. It means they will use the knowledge and opinions that they know in order to gain some worldly benefit. And knowledge then becomes something which is abused. So it's very important we protect knowledge. Protecting it includes checking its authenticity, making sure that that which we're relaying is authentically reported from the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, for example, from the ulama, making sure that we don't add to that which is not from it, of opinion that is not authentic or not strong. And also being careful about how the knowledge is being spread amongst the people. And we also need to pay attention to the fact that nowadays, with all of this increase in writing and increase of sharing of knowledge due to technology, that sometimes you find that people are more easily connected to knowledge, but at the same time the status for it has diminished, in that people are narrating or discussing big issues in the matters which are in reality require much more wara', much more cautiousness and scrupulousness, because it's not something easy. Or they might find that people entering their opinions in matters which even the ulama have resisted or have restrained their opinion due to investigation. So protecting knowledge also means we don't proceed ourselves into that which we have no knowledge of, and we don't get involved in that which we're not established upon. It means we don't know very much about it. And so very important when it comes to knowledge that we give knowledge a status. If you preserve it, it will preserve you. But if you waste it, it will become wasted. And that if you're just sharing the benefits and dealing with knowledge in a way that it's not honored, means you are not even representing the knowledge the way it should be represented, then in reality that knowledge won't benefit you. And the Shaykh then talks about compromise. And it says compromising on behalf of the religion is a despicable characteristic. As for diplomacy, then it's not. But don't mix between the two, or you will be led by compromise to the presence of open hypocrisy, and compromise will blemish your faith. And this is an important benefit, that compromising is not part of the way of the believer. The believer doesn't compromise their religion, their beliefs, their methodology for other things. We don't make mudahana, we don't humiliate ourselves by passing our belief and our methodology to something other than truth. And this is important because there's a fine line between the two. To be diplomatic, have wisdom and hikmah is different than being someone who's compromising their beliefs for some type of greater benefit as is claimed. And so very important to remember the ayah Allah mentioned in the Quran. What Allah mentioned in the Quran about the Quraysh, wishing that Rasulullah would compromise with them so that he may be compromised with them. Means giving up some part of your deen for their benefit, the same way that they would wish at the times that he would worship their deity so they will in turn worship Allah, and then it creates a type of compromise. And this compromise itself is impermissible if it leads to loss of the truth and it affects someone's religion. But being diplomatic means when to speak and when not to speak and when to discuss. This is to do with knowledge and wisdom, and sometimes with experience. But to compromise your beliefs in order to accompany someone or to please the people, this is not acceptable. It's very important. So important that we don't compromise, because this will end up being mudahana. And then he mentions, with all of this advice, and this is again for the student of knowledge and the alim, both of them have this. He mentions then a point number 49, which is related to the remaining of the book. It's to do with the issues of ilm itself. Because the book, as we're reading it, we're seeing it's a mixture of advice, etiquette, of narrations, And the Shaykh then turns to point 49, talking about passion for books. A student of knowledge, he needs to have passion for the kutub. And the nobility of knowledge is well known due to its general benefit and the dire need for it, more than the need to breathe. And this is what many of the Salaf would mention, that someone is in more need of knowledge than food and drink. And then they ascribe to Imam Ahmed that he said, rahimahullah, even more so than even the air that we breathe. Because in reality, we know we can eat and drink parts of the time of the day, and other parts we don't need it. And breath you need every hour, but knowledge you need every moment. So that you ensure that upon guidance, you ensure that upon correctness. So this is how the important ilm is. Ahwaj, people are more in need of knowledge min ta'am wa sharab, more than food and drink. But the reality is that, unfortunately, knowledge has become something now which is not so necessary amongst the people. So here he said the Shaykh, the manifestation, deficiency in it is dependent upon the extent of its diminishment, and the attainment of satisfaction, happiness is dependent upon the quantity attained. And for this reason, seekers of knowledge will feel passion for books, and the passion for collecting books with careful selection. And there are many accounts of this which would take too long to mention. And the Shaykh indicates that he wrote a book called Khabar al-Kitab, the news of the book, in which he discusses the stories of the Salaf and the ulama before about the love they have for books. And so one thing we take it from this, that Talib Ilm, he needs to have a library, and a Talib Ilm needs to be one who reads. And this is something important because reading now, with the current era that we live in with technology, is becoming diminishing practice. And people don't read. They might read here and there, some things shared. But when it comes to actually having a book and reading it from beginning to end, it's becoming a lost practice. So we should, as students of knowledge, be in the habit of reading. Every day you should be reading. Every week you should be finishing something. It could be articles, it could be books, it could be all these things. But no one should be without a library. And the Shaykh's going to advise us next what to put in our library. So it's important, Talib Ilm is a person of books. And this is important because when it comes to the books, there's no minimum that someone can have. It means books is too many to collect, too many to read. And if you look at the ulama, you see that they have the largest collections of books, past and present. Some of them, like Imam al-Suyuti, was nicknamed Ibn Qutb, the son of books, because he was born in the library, literally. He was born in the library, subhanAllah. As the ulama mentioned in his biography, Hafiz Suyuti, rahimahullah, that his mother was pregnant, and her father, means his father, asked her to go and get a book for him in the library. And when she went to the library, her water broke, and she gave birth to him in the books. And it's not coincidence then that Imam Suyuti is the most prolific scholar in Islam. So some scholars said that in terms of books that we have present, he probably has the most. And some ulama probably wrote more than him, like Ibn Jawzi, rahimahullah, and some mentioned other scholars like Ibn Taymiyyah, Bayhaqi, had tremendous amounts of books. But in terms of what's intact we have with us, perhaps he has the most. And so there's no coincidence. Ulama like this, the libraries were tremendous. They mentioned also Imam Ibn Qayyim, rahimahullah, he had one of the biggest libraries. And one amongst the greatest things for him was collecting the books. The passion that he had for it was inexhaustible. It means he would always get the newest books and have it with him. And later on, when he passed away, he inherited those books to his children. But they didn't take care of him in the way that he used to. And if you look even before him, you see the ulama, that was part of their mission when it comes to Talib Ilm, to collect the books. And at that time, books were not like now, published and printed. They were handwritten and copied. So some of them would copy physically books and keep with them. And or go overseas and collect copies and bring it with them. Means when they traveled, they would load a camel for themselves, means their property and the things, and another one for the books. And so today, with our era, which should be something that's part of the Talib Ilm, passion for books, which if you see the Tulab Ilm, how they react with the books, and the ulama as well, this is something which creates that love for knowledge. Because in books are more than information. In there is answers and guidance. In there is a reminder. In there is things which can help our community. And so for us, we should always be careful with buying books and also to put in the good books, not every book. For some books are not worthy to be in the library. And some books are also not dangerous to be in our possession. But the ulama, they always advise, and the Shaykh will do it now as well, advise us in terms of what books we should keep as the foundation of your library. And this also can extend to books that we don't have a physical copy, where we have a copy in electronic form, or sometimes it's hard to get a physical copy, but still, if it's possible, someone should prefer the print. The print has more benefit than the electronic copy, in that the printed version, the first benefit of it is that there is khair in having the print. It's a type of wealth to have that knowledge with you. And secondly, is that the book, the printed version, it's easy for someone to read and study versus the print and the electronic, people that have difficulty in completing it. Sometimes they even don't read properly. Along with the fact that the printed copy goes through a certain rigorous practice of verification and editing, which sometimes online copies don't. Even Maktab al-Shamila, sometimes you find the books over there, some of the books are not correct wordings. Some ulama have mentioned the wordings have been off, because again, they're electronically, they've been put in electronically, so sometimes mistakes. But nonetheless, right, someone is not able to get a physical copy, then he gets the electronic copy, and either way it's benefit. So Shaykh now mentions the foundation of your library. And he says, make use of the books that are written upon the way of mentioning the proofs and gaining understanding the causes of the rulings, and diving into the deep meanings of the issues. And from the greatest of these books available to us are the books of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah and his student Imam Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah. So those two books are books someone should be studying and should try to own their books and be with him. And master, they become one of the, becomes a faqih, a jurist. And some ulama even, they mentioned that they would keep this book with them for passing fatwa and the likes. And of course, both of these scholars you mentioned earlier, they have more books than that. These are just the best of them, of their best. Of course, if you look into their biographies, you see they have smaller books. So even though somebody, he would try his best to get them. But the Shaykh is mentioning here the books that you should have as part of your library. He mentions as well, thirdly, Hafid even Imam al-Dhahabi. He died 747. And Imam Dhahabi, rahimahullah, many of us will hear his name and we're familiar with him, but he's that great Imam. The Islamic scholar in hadith, of history, and a scholar who in reality is a scholar of the various sciences of Islam, but his speciality in ilm al-hadith and in tariq, in history and also the narrators, the biographies. So he mentioned his books in general, and most famous of his books, and no one knows his books are very common from Imam Dhahabi. Many of us probably hear his name. Siyar Alam al-Balad. So this book itself is so important for us to have, if you can have it. I mean, it's tremendous in size. It's about 25 plus volumes. Depends on the print again. But a book which is tremendous in reminder. So this book itself is a book where he compiles the biographies of the people before, starting with as far back as the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, of course, the Sirat Rasul. And then he goes to the Sahaba and downwards until his time. And so this book is one of his most celebrated books. But he has other books in Mustalah and Hadith. He has books in Ilm al-Rijal. He has books of biographies and he has other books even, Wasaya and like this. For example, Wasaya, Imam Dhahabi, the advices Imam Dhahabi to a certain scholar. So this book itself is important because if you want to learn biographies, it's probably the best book. Probably only next, rivaled by the book of Imam Ibn Kathir, Al-Bidayah wa Nihaya. In terms of its scope, it covers so much. So it's very important if someone wants to learn about the biographies of these great Imam to read those books. He not only reminds you, but he also brings fawaid and he has justice. Imam al-Dhahabi, one thing about him, despite his critical nature, is very critical when it comes to narrations about people. He comments on who's upright, who isn't, which narrations are weak, which are not. But he also gives benefits in there as well, in terms of lessons you take from biographies of people before us. So it's not just you read about an Imam before or how he lived. He will also tell you what we can take from that. And so the book itself, you never get tired of reading it. And sad to say that many times we look at our own situation, that we all know the importance of following the Salaf, but sometimes we don't know enough about the Salaf. That we don't know them. And that's why it's so important to study. When you're feeling yourself going down in your Iman, you're feeling falling away from the Deen, read the biographies of Salaf, how they strive to learn knowledge, what they went through of fitan, what they went through of even great accomplishments, and sometimes even great stories that encourage you. And it's more than amusement. This is important to strengthen our Iman, because sometimes we feel low, we feel desperate, we feel despondent. Some people feel that they can't learn, they can't study. But when you read these biographies, your Iman and your zeal increases. He also mentions fourthly the books of Imam Hafid ibn Kathir, rahimahullah, who died 774 Hijri. And both these great Imams, as well as the one after, are students of Imam Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn Qayyim. So this is important to remember that. So Ibn Kathir, he has many, the head of them, Tafsir Ibn Kathir. Tafsir Ibn Kathir is so important, it's very important, the best of tafsirs available to us, as according to Imam As-Suyuti and Imam Shawkani. The best tafsir available, they say, is Tafsir Ibn Kathir. But Tafsir Ibn Kathir is not the only book he has other books, but we will mention the second one, which is very common, Al-Bidayah wa Nihaya, the beginning and end. And the beginning and end is more than just Sirah and Siyar and Tarajum. It's actually the beginning of time. He starts with the creation, the first of creation. And from there he starts history down. So when you read Al-Bidayah wa Nihaya, in reality you learn about the whole world and how it came and what happened. And of course it is checking and verification. There are books, alhamdulillah, they verify most, not everything. But some of these topics Ibn Kathir talks about are very important. I believe Dar al-Salam and some of their project now, they compiled or translated some portions of this book, even beyond the biography of the Prophet ﷺ. So there are some parts of Al-Bidayah wa Nihaya in English, but not all of it. But that book is, again, very important book, a reference for biographies. Inshallah, we'll mention the last one. We'll end with this for today. He mentions 50, the books of Hafid ibn Rajab, rahimahullah, who died 795 Hijri. Again, from the students of Ibn Qayyim, rahimahullah. Ibn Rajab, many of us, we know him. But when it comes to his books, he has so many. And mashallah, many of them have been translated, so it's available for us to read and to study. But amongst those books that take the precedence over all his other books, especially for the beginners, is Sharh of the 40 Hadith. Jami' Ulum al-Hikam. And this book itself, we cannot emphasize enough how important it is. This book is the knowledge, the compendium of knowledge. It's a book where he explains the 40 Hadith, or in this case the 50, because he adds the remaining. But it's more than just a book of Hadith, it's a book of Manhaj, a book of Aqeedah, a book of Fiqh. And so we advise his brothers who study 40 Hadith and memorize it to have a copy of this book, because it is, you cannot do without in terms of its detail and its benefit. Inshallah, we'll end with this much for now. Anyone has any points? Otherwise, we'll pray. Yes.
What's the best print for Jama?
There are many prints. It depends. I've seen there's a print with the Tahqiq of Shaykh Salim Hilali, and there's another print, but there's more than one. So we perhaps will mention some of the good ones available, because there's more than one. But we'll mention, inshallah, the best one. Yes.
Can you just repeat the book, the 40th Tahqiq?
So Jami' Ulum al-Hikam. So Jami', this is a compendium of Ulum al-Hikam, of knowledge and wisdom. I believe it's in English as well. طيب, inshallah, we'll end with this much. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.